Welcome to another episode of Kickin It with KeKe, life, love, and all that other shit. I am joined today with Dr. Robert Copeland, and we will be discussing his book called The Synchronization of Life. Dr. Copeland, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me, Miss KeKe. I'm blessed to be here, and I'm chomping at the store.
Well, I am glad that you decided to kick it with me today. You could have been doing anything else because I'm sure you have a busy schedule, and I am appreciative that you are here tuning in and kicking it with me today. Before I get started, I like to do a mental check-in with all of my guests because, you know, life is hard. We have had some hard days. So I just want to see, how are you? How is Dr. Copeland doing?
Well, Dr. Copeland, I'm a person that I consider myself to be pretty empathic, and so currently with what I do, I'm a therapist with the Department of Mental Health in South Carolina, and so I'm doing probably as well as everybody else is. A lot of times I have to focus on everyone else, but I'm maintaining in these times as everyone is trying to. But I do realize that the dynamics of the time and that everybody's struggling. So, I just try to keep my mental health where it needs to be.
Absolutely. And with that being said, I always give my guests the opportunity to introduce themselves. That way you can put out what you would like the viewers to know about you. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and you just let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I'm breaking up a little bit, but I'm hopeful that you can hear and the viewers can hear. My name is Rob Copeland. I am a lifelong person that advocates for the less trodden. In my professional life, I've worked in behavioral health care for kids, juveniles, also have worked in higher education with first generation college students who have a unique path in regards to their education. And at this point in my life, I'm back to my roots. My roots are therapy, and I'm enjoying that aspect of it. I felt the need to give back at this point in my life. And so those are some of the things that I've done over my career. And, just been a kind of a person that's involved in this community, involved with the people in my area, and just try to be a positive influence.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I appreciate you because mental health and just being an advocate for that, it is so pivotal in this day and time. It has always been pivotal because I'm a life coach. I'm a certified life coach. So I practice mindset and personal development and being intentional about making sure that we're living our best lives as our best selves. And that starts with the mind, in my opinion. So before we dive into your book, can you talk a little bit about the importance of making sure that we are healthy in our minds in order to live a more successful or abundant life?
Yeah. If you look at the mind, if you look at mental health as a part, we don't tend to have going to the doctor for a checkup, but for some reason, we as the majority of the population, we have problems when it comes to our mental health. And I want to emphasize that health. And so when you're talking about your health, you need to stay on top of things. You need to understand the dynamics and how you think about things. And you need to seek out assistance if you feel like you're overwhelmed, or if you have levels of anxiety, depression, whatever they may be. And so I just want to be a person that reaches out to the population to say, it's okay to get a little assistance. Problem
Absolutely.
going to the doctor, so we shouldn't have a problem going to the therapist, because it is a part of who we are and it's a part of our health.
Absolutely. And a lot of people think when it comes to mental health, it's mental illness. I think it's taboo,
Exactly.
especially in our community, that we don't talk about mental health because that just makes everyone feels like walking on eggshells because, okay, Tyrone, don't mess with him because he's just a little touched or whatever. We've all heard people say that. So when it comes to mental health in the Black community being taboo, what can you say that can help one of our listeners, or maybe many of our listeners today, get out of their own head and get away from that traditional negative self-talk, or just hearing about stuff in their past growing up when it comes to mental health?
I would just simply say this, and I've always been a person that tries to lead by example. So I tend to share with clients and individuals that I work with that, even me as the therapist, there are times I need to talk to someone. I need to
Absolutely.
bounce things off of someone. And as you said, mental health does not equate to mental illness.
Mhm.
Mental health is just the mindset and the state to make sure that you are still where you need to be or where you want to be. And so I just simply say this, as a part of that whole being, as a part of a person that has to navigate through this thing that we call life, we want to be physically, we want to be spiritually, and we want to be mentally able to meet the challenges.
Absolutely. And thank you for elaborating on that a little bit. So let's get into your book. I have it right here.
Oh, wow.
You see my
Okay.
little notes?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I am talking to Dr. Robert Copeland, and we are about to discuss it. We're not telling y'all all the goods because we want y'all to buy this book, The Synchronization of Life. And it is a story, a family's alignment pursued. So what, I know besides your family, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, and I'll say this, Ms. KeKe. People ask me, how did you come about writing this book? And why did you write this book? And I'm simply going to say this. I'm a spiritual person, and I believe that you're guided to do certain things. I never, I've been an educator and I've written different things, journals and academic type things. I never thought I would write a book. But the best way to describe it, it was kind of a spiritual endeavor. It was a push that came from something greater than me. This is the part that I think fascinates people, and it either scares people or they're like, wow. But when I tell you that I had to read the book, to remember nuances of the story. So literally, I have this vivid memory of the better part of a year and a half, 2 years, sitting in front of the typewriter and the laptop, and just kind of going away. And I remember that process, but I had to read the story as I was reading it for the first time. And I remember bits and pieces of those family stories, but I was kind of blown away as I actually looked at the book because I knew it was something greater than me.
It is an awesome story. When I tell you I started it, I could not put it down. I read the book in 2 days.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
And this book is over, 304 pages.
Yes.
Yeah. I am an avid reader. I write as well. So yes. I know about the pages. I have them, full-length novels, but it was just I learned so much through these two families and their journeys, and right. the sibling love and the mother love and the estranged father relationships and all this kind of stuff. Yes. And I love this, what you said in the preface of the book. It says, I believe that we are connected in a spiritual manner to the ancestors who have come before us. I believe that this connection is a part of the concept of synchronicity. Can you break that down a little bit for the readers? The listeners and the readers for the most part, because we want these people to buy your book and fall in love with this story the way that I have.
Well, I will simply say this, and I'm hopeful that we understand that these two families are representative of all of us in the human space. We should be able to relate to these families as if they are our own. Mm-hmm. The whole concept of synchronicity and the concept of the spirituality is to understand that your ancestors made decisions, good, bad, or indifferent, but they made these decisions. And from those decisions, here are you. Mm-hmm. And so I mean, I think about all types of different dynamics. I'll give you an example. My parents met in college.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if my dad didn't go to that school?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work? Who would come now?
Right.
And you know, and so we have to really understand the connection with decisions that we make and the generations that come after us. I am I'm very cautious with decisions I make because I do understand not only affecting my family here in this dynamic, but it's going to affect those that come after me. And
Absolutely.
so I want us to understand that concept that when we make decisions, it's not just about us, it's about the folks that come after us. And so I think that's the way that I attempt to connect this story. And I understand, and I'm so grateful for those that have come before me and understand this dynamic. This is something that I was able to get as I got older. I have even come to grips with parts of my ancestry that I was not proud of.
Mm-hmm.
Parts of my ancestry that I could not relate to, those individuals that I didn't understand. And now looking at it from a different lens, I'm thankful for them because without them, I would not be here.
Absolutely. And it's just a circle of life. And if we all take that perspective and look at it like that, then we will understand each other better as a human race. And then the family dynamics will make so much sense to us. You know, why this person is the way that they are hereditary, you know, conditions. Because you talked about that a little bit in the book. And it's just amazing. And I'm glad that you say that because I highlighted. Let me go, you know, I like to highlight. And I apologize for highlighting in your book, but this is my copy, you know. So.
That's fine. I tell you, I'm truly humbled. So I'm
Yes. So you said something, and it says the interesting dynamic is the many lines of our ancestry that must come together to create an individual. The individual members who comprise the branches of one's family tree may have never met each other, like you just said about your mom and dad, or they may have never crossed paths, yet they come together and are a large part of who we are as individuals. It is also, it is another part of synchronization, as ancestors are all largely an important part of who we are. They help to create us. Their existences may not have had any relevance to one another, but the decisions that they made or that they did not make during their lifetime are directly related to our existence. Their decisions had direct relevance to the individuals that we are today, we have become. That right there was an aha moment for me, because I guess it came full circle with the way that my siblings are versus first cousins versus, you know, older generations, our viewpoints and stuff like that. And so I would love to have, and the holidays are coming up, so I would like to have a discussion about this book with my siblings, and I have told all of them about it. I know my younger sister has purchased the book.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if my other two siblings have yet, but I would really love for us to sit down and have a family discussion about your book to see if there's some of us within the story, which I can see myself in some of the characters in the story.
Absolutely.
So I think that the Synchronization of Life, your book, will spark those conversations, hard conversations that we have swept under the rug from generation to generation, and it keeps us stagnant in a sense that we don't want to look underneath the covers that covered up parts of who we are, because the people may not look like us, or the skin tones are different, or, you know, and talking about the kids that are in the story. And I loved all the names. But before we get to that, Is another point that you made in the book, and you were talking about divine intervention. It says one cannot dismiss the brutality that existed during these periods, whether it is through language or action. It was part of who we were as a nation. Unfortunately, it is a part of who we continue to be at times. I believe in the concept of divine intervention. Can you give us a little, breakdown of what you believe when it comes to divine intervention?
I'm a person of faith, and I understand the concept of being a person of faith and believing in a higher power and believing in, I would say this, and we're struggling with it right now, and understand I've gone back and forth, but I'm a person that tends to try to believe in the goodness of man. The goodness. Don't say that everybody is good.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, but I believe that is what God or higher power, however you want to describe this being, I think that that is what we are meant to be. And so the whole spiritual aspect, I know that it's a struggle for some, and it's also, it can be a daily struggle for an individual.
Right.
But I always rely on that faith when I go back to the most difficult times that I may have in my life. And I have seen over and over again that I've come out on the other side. I don't think that's by chance. I think it's because of the way that I live my life in the, hopefully in the manner that the Creator would want me to live it. And so I'm a staunch believer in, if you do good things resonate back to you. If you live your life in a manner that you are caring and empathic to individuals that are less fortunate to you, you are given opportunities to give back. And that's what I've always tried to do. I have a mention in there about my maternal grandfather, and he simply said to us all the time that people may think because, and he was an educator, and my mom's an educator, my dad's an educator, my aunt, I mean, just everybody.
Yeah, surrounded by him.
Yeah, and so he said this, and I remember this vividly. He said, people may think that you're privileged. They may think you're privileged because you come from this line of educators and people that are educated. He said, if they think you are privileged, you take that privilege, you take it, and you give back. You are always supposed to give back. And so I've always kind of lived my life that way, that it is my responsibility as an individual to give back whenever I can.
Absolutely. And I love that. So do you feel like writing this book is relevant in today's family structure?
I'm hopeful. This book is as I think I've mentioned before, I think this book is bigger than me, is bigger than anything that we will do. I'm more, people are like, do you want it to be a bestseller? Maybe. But I'm more about trying to get the story out to people. So if you were to tell me, Rob, you have written this book and we've decided we're just going to give it away to 1 million people and you're not going to make a dime from it, I'd be like, okay. Because the story gets
bigger
out.
than that.
It's bigger than that. And so that's what I'm hopeful for. I'm hopeful for, as you were saying, I'm hopeful for families to come together and look at the book and start analyzing their own stuff and to literally be able to say, those Hawkins were just like we were, or those
Yeah.
McKenzies were just like us. You
Mhm.
remember when so-and-so used, and that's what I want to do. I want to have that connection. And I want that connection. I want it so much for African-American folks, but guess
Mhm.
what? I wanted to cross racial lines. I
Mhm.
wanted across ethnic lines, because I think it's a story that we have to start understanding
Mhm.
that this is us.
Right. And we're so much alike, we don't even know it. Because it's so much prejudice and racism out there, we don't allow ourselves to look at someone that doesn't look like us or doesn't come from the same background as someone who is like us.
Well, and exactly. And the thing is, I also say this within our community, within our African American community, these stories were the stories that were your great grandmama didn't talk about it.
Right.
We didn't want to talk about it. We didn't want to have that connection. That we hid those connections,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what I simply say is, I don't say that we have to necessarily celebrate them, but we should be very candid about these are the things that happen during these times. And because of these things, good, bad, or indifferent, we are here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I have my highlights and I have to go to this one.
All right.
It says, understanding the dynamics associated with one's family is extremely important. Mm-hmm. Individual decisions that were made by our ancestors have had an effect on us, on you and your immediate family. Future mm-hmm. generations of your family will be affected by the decisions that you make right now. Mm-hmm. Enjoy your life, but also realize that your life impacts the lives of the future generations of your family who will come after you. That was so powerful for me, because not everybody, and we discussed this a little bit, takes into consideration of who comes next to mm-hmm. carry on the family name and have that legacy continue from generations to generations. And mm-hmm. in order for the next generation to carry on that legacy, they have to know where they come from.
Absolutely.
So the conversations need to be had. Hey, you are a product of this, and this, and that. That doesn't define who you are, but it's a part of who you are. Exactly. You have to make the decision to be better and do better, regardless of what your circumstances may have been.
Totally agree. And, it comes full circle. Mm-hmm. I'll simply say this, and these are kind of the, I guess, rhetorical questions that go through my mind. Mm-hmm. So we look at the cover of the book and we look at John Thomas DeLoach, mm-hmm. my 2 times great grandfather, right?
Yep.
I wonder what he would think. Wonder what he would think of me. I wonder if in any way, shape, or form he would be proud of me. So we look at him and we look at how complex his character is. Well, this is, and I'm not going to give away too much of the book, but this is the guy that was able to put out these racial epitaphs towards his cat. Mm-hmm. But he also sent all his kids to college.
To college, yep.
Yeah, all his biracial kids to college.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And see, I felt sorry for him in a sense, because of everything that he had. He didn't really know his father. And then you already know, I'm not trying to tell everything about the book, his condition with his mom, his situation with his mom. Mm-hmm. So that brings me to the question, do you feel like, had his mom had that conversation about where he came from and who he was as a child, mm-hmm. the dynamics of his relationship with his own kids would have been better?
I think there's a possibility, but I think you were still dealing with the construct of race. Mm. And you're dealing with early 1900s, Alabama. Mm-hmm. So how much could he have done at that period?
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at maybe the dynamics was the dynamics that they agreed on as a means of survival. If he had indicated that these are my kids and this is the woman that I want to marry, what happens at that point?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said it, because him and his best friend, they always told the kids, hey, you can't be seen talking to us because we, they didn't really use that word loosely, but we know who you are. We're not going to hurt you in any way, but people looking on the outside may not feel the same way. As a kid, that would have messed me up. That would have messed me up, because I'm like, why, not having that understanding until I got older, and still, wanting to have that relationship with my father. And it just subconsciously happens. Yeah. And you said the construct of race, and you have, look, like when I tell you I have highlights, it says the construct of race was made by man. Racial differences were created in an effort to divide, to degrade, and to make one group of human beings feel inferior or superior to another group of human beings. Let's talk about it.
Well, I'll just simply say this. We live in a country that was founded on a concept of exactly what we're talking about. And it's been that way since our inception. And we talk about the concept of systemic racism. And literally, this country was made for white Anglo-Saxon men to be at the top of the food chain. Right. That is literally, we have laws, we have things that they're still doing currently. Gerrymandering for voting and preventing individuals to have their right to vote, and putting all these things in place to try to prevent people from voting. Right. We look at the concept of police oversight, brutality, however you want to say it, but within our community, we visually see these things. We saw Eric Garner in front of us. And still, you will have people that try to make you think that in some way, shape, or form, he was responsible for his own death. Right. That is literal brainwashing. We have this concept now where we have folks that are afraid to teach kids the accurate history of our country because, oh my goodness, they are going to be traumatized hearing that. Right. But we don't think about generations of kids of color who have been consistently traumatized when you don't address exactly what happened and what are we going to do now to change it. Right. See, these are the things that we're dealing with currently. Absolutely. So we look at it from our inception to now, and it's more of the same.
Okay, that's heavy. That is heavy, and the conversations need to be had, because until we understand the history of it, then we can't change what's happening currently and take it into the future. Because I just finished reading the post-traumatic slave syndrome book by Dr. Joy Degree. And she talks about understanding where it all began in order to break it down to move forward in a positive way. And understanding that, the mother who called their children stupid or slow was protecting them, not knowing that she was doing harm by calling them that, because that was getting in their mind, making them believe that they were that way. Right. So they
Right.
didn't think that they deserved to have anything better in life. Until we can understand that, if you gave your child that recognition, then he or she could have been sold, or what have you. How can we change our verbiage when it comes to our older generations to make them have the conversation? Well, not really make them, but spark those conversations so they can open up and relive some of the hurtful moments from their past in order to share it with us as the current generation and bring it into the next.
I think that we have to be consistent with our questions. We have to be loving with our questions. We have to be non-threatening with our questions. We have to let the generations before us know that, something, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's time to talk about these things.
Mm-hmm.
These things that hurt you so much, or hurt grandma so much, or hurt great grandmama so much, it's okay to talk about them. And let's talk about them together while we still have time, so we can get accurate portrayals of who we are. I'm so interested in the concept of genealogy, and I was able to find a picture of one of my 2 times great grandmothers. That's another line of my family, but her sister. And her sister was born in 1865, right before the emancipation. And I just looked at her eyes, and I just was like, just looking at them and just wondering, what could she share with me?
Wow.
What could we talk about?
Mm-hmm.
What was her life like?
Mm-hmm.
And I understand, this is the thing that I want people to kind of get. A lot of times we're told, well, that was so far, far ago. That was a long time ago. My 78-year-old mother was a part of the modern day civil rights movement. I remember as a child being in a segregated community and not being able to drink water. That's within my lifetime.
Wow.
But let's look at my mom. My mom has an active memory of her great grandmother who died when she was 8 years old.
Wow.
Her great grandmother was a slave.
Wow.
That's within my mother's lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
She's the conduit to that period.
Right.
She's still alive.
Wow.
And so when we look at that and understand, literally, there are people still walking this earth who have a connection to those that were enslaved.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that long ago.
It really wasn't. If now that you're thinking about it, it's just bridging the gap, like
Exactly.
starting the conversation, and you just never know what might come about.
Yeah.
Never know what might come about. So let's get into the names, all of the B names. I love those names. Are these names are these real names?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely. Those are the given names that my 2 times great grandmother, Ellen McKenzie, gave to all of her kids. And so when the one that's given name was William, he was called Bill. So every one of them was a B. And that's what she named every one of them, was a B.
Wow.
Don't know why, but that's
that's just how it happened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And we're not telling y'all the names. We want y'all to read the book to find out the names. But it's one in particular that I just absolutely, absolutely love.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, he had to step up and be the brother as well as the father figure. So you already know who I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. I love his name. I love his name. I love his character. I love what he embodies. It's it's refreshing to read about characters that have humility and that embraces reading and knowledge and just have a zeal for being better, getting out of the surroundings and not want to be like somebody that you know who his role is in your life, but you really can't say because you were traumatized, really. Because when the first time that you said it, you were told never say it again. So you like, wow, what do I do? How do I feel about this? So I believe that he held on to a lot, rightfully so. But the good thing that I enjoy about his character is he didn't take that out on his siblings. He embraced them more and loved on them more so that they didn't feel like they was lacking what he lacked. But as they got older, they realized that they all knew, but yeah, we lacking the same thing. So let's just figure out another outlet so we won't be stuck in that. And they all embraced education.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
that is so refreshing because and I'm saying that because I, as a writer, I always have my main characters be smart. They love knowledge. They want to contribute in the world with giving back in some positive way. It's not all about this, gang banging or whatever. And I'm not knocking anybody that write that. It's just not what KeKe Chanel does. Right. So
well, let me just tell you this, and we don't want to spoil things for the reader and the people that are getting the book, but we talked a little bit before, like, what are the things that are the actual truth and what are the things that you embellish as an author. I will simply tell you this: the concept of education within that family is absolutely true.
Oh my, I'm so glad. Oh.
Every one of them was a college graduate. And the one of the brothers was a renowned cardiologist in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He was the 1917 valedictorian at Tuskegee Institute. That's factual. That's true.
I am so glad that's so true. I am so glad. See, that warms my heart because after reading this book and you told me that some of it was not, real, that is so, I'm speechless because I am so glad that is so true. Yeah. Okay, so it's a segue into one of my other favorite characters, and I really want to know was she a real person? Renzi.
Oh, absolutely. That's my my Hawkins line. That's my 2 times great grandma.
I love the gentleness and the love that she had for all of those kids, even the ones that she didn't birth into this world. She reminded me of my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, and her name was Ruth. And she loved on my grandfather's, kids that came before she had kids.
Absolutely.
And they loved her to death. Like her gentleness, she walk into a room and just make you feel like everything else doesn't matter. Like I feel this love radiating from her and I'm good. Like I am so good. So I'm so glad.
Arenzia Miller Hawkins.
Absolutely.
That was her name. Yep.
Married to Levi.
Yep.
When he was 26 and she was 13.
Those are my people.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And so that brings me to Horace. Okay, so
my great grandfather.
I love his story, although it's a painful story.
It is.
It is a painful story, but I'm grateful to know where he started, to understand the ending or his life over the course of everything that he encountered. And Horace, I mean, just tell us a little bit about him, without telling the whole story.
I will just simply say my great-grandfather's presence within my family construct is still felt today. I think I was maybe about 2 when he passed away. So I don't have actual memories of being with him, but I'm always told stories about his strength and his courage and his faith and his sense of family and his sense of making sure that he did things the right way. And so I am a person that strongly believes that he resonates within all of us today, because we have taken these characteristics that he had and have continued them, hopefully in the manner that he would have been proud of. But yeah, Horace Robert Hawkins, my great grandfather, and just a good, solid human being. Yeah, absolutely.
I really love him. I love him because when I tell you that a lot of these characters, whether real life, factual, whatever, they remind me of people from my own family. He reminds me of my Uncle Willie, and we called him Unc, and everybody, he passed away, a couple of years ago, and it's been a while, but it's like he's still alive. Like his legacy continues. He loved to play spades. He liked to drink his Dr. Pepper.
Yep.
He loved Sam Cooke.
Yep.
He always wanted to take a ride somewhere. And we just love him. And that's how Horace's character, he reminded me of my uncle. Okay.
And remember, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to resonate within your spirit, within your soul, and to make these connections, that this is all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I got this book. I'm probably going to read it again.
All right.
And do it a little bit slower and break it down a little bit more, because it's a lot of characters. It's a lot of names to remember.
It is.
And, I'm thankful that I was able to make notes so I could stay on the same page. And one of the characters, and I have to know, is this a real character or not? Junie. Nathaniel Cleophas Wingate. Julia.
I will say this. Junie is a combination of a lot of different individuals that I have been exposed to, whether it's through family stories or my own experience. So Junie is reflective of those individuals.
Okay. Well, that's a relief, because he all over the place. But I had a bittersweet love to hate relationship with Junie, because although he didn't understand John's preference, he loved those children.
He loved those.
Without fault. He did.
Without fault. Exactly. So I look at. I just kind of look at Junie, and if you take it across all racial and ethnic and everything, just take it across. Just Junie. Junie's the drunk uncle that would run out. We all have him. He runs out. Somebody get him. Get Junie. So yeah, I tried to make Junie complex, but I did try to have him have some redeeming qualities. So when you're reading it and you're looking at it, like, well, the first thing you're like, this dude is racist. But then you start to peel the layers back and you're like, he loves these kids.
And I'm glad that it turned out like that, because I was scared for a minute. I was like, okay, this racist, you know what, is going to do something to hurt one of these kids. I'm glad that it turned out the way that it turned out, because I was a little afraid when I started reading it. So, but yeah, I end up really enjoying Junie's character.
Well, thank you.
It was almost like he was John Thomas's saving grace, like kind of like guardian angel to a sense, because Junie picked up on a lot of stuff that I believe John Thomas was just closing his eyes deliberately on. And so he was like, you need to wake up. You need to really wake up because you have something special and you really just gonna let that pass you by because you stuck in your past. And, you know, I love when John Thomas, he spoke to himself in a part of the book and it says, I wonder who hurt my mother. It's obvious that someone has hurt her. Someone hurt my mother deeply and to her core. That was a wow factor for me because he understood his mama, you know, because alcoholism ran deep. And so seeing her go from this beautiful woman who is a successful business owner to just this shell of a person who just didn't care about life, herself, him, anything.
But understand that that was the struggle that he was also facing.
Yeah.
So through his journey and through his pain, he's able to recognize, you know something? I'm hurting. Mama's hurting too. And to be able to make that connection. And then he's in the midst of that pain. And then we as the reader are like, well, what is he going to do? How is he going to navigate his pain? And I won't say too much, but you know, we watch him and his journey.
We watch him on his journey, and then we watch the same snake rear its ugly head in one of the kids. Y'all have to read the book to find out.
So you and it's interesting, we're talking about factual and embellished stuff. All the characteristics of the children are family accurate portrayals. So every one of them, that was who they were. Even from the concept of my great-grandmother Bessie and her gift. I'll just say that. That's family stories that have been passed down.
And I was gonna touch on the gift a little bit, but I didn't know if you wanted to get into that or not.
What's that?
The gift that the grandmother had. Betsy.
I mean, we can get into it. Doesn't bother me.
Okay. So the gift that we're talking about is like kind of like psychic gift or you know, visions or what have you. Talk a little bit about that when it comes to family being afraid of those individuals within the family. Now, she was embraced, like her family, like, you know what, they took that and say, hey, if Bessie have something, y'all better believe it because it's gonna happen.
Yeah. But you have to think about that was kind of the norm, you know, in families when I can't speak that was a norm. I will just say this, that has kind of been the norm within my family.
Right.
So for Bessie and the story of my grandmother Lucille, that's something that happened. So that's not me making that up. That happened. That literally happened to my grandmother, and my great-grandmother felt it. That's one that my grandmother told my mother, and my mother told me.
See, that makes me so sad because it's like, oh my God. When y'all read this book, y'all will understand and y'all will experience every emotion that you really can think of, because I'm like, oh my God, not again, not again. You can't be doing this to us again. So with that being said, can I ask, did everybody perish the way that it was written in the book?
Let's see. Beauregard, the youngest brother, I literally had to write the dynamics of his death because we did not know that. We just knew he died young.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But it is accurate that he died at about 22 or 23 years of age.
Okay. My light just went out. So he was young but I was not expecting that scene. When I read that scene, I was not expecting that that scene and the emotion that came about with it. I just couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even put myself in the situation because they were so close and the dynamics they had as as siblings. And it was just I'm still speechless and have no words when it comes to this. When it comes to that. So family values, it goes to a scene where Horace and his brother were out, Joel, and they stumbled
but
upon,
actually they pronounced his name Joel.
Joel, that's right. Joel. Yeah, I know a Joel. He's a guy.
Yep.
But they stumble upon something that is very heart-wrenching. And I remember Horace saying, why do they hate us so much? We ain't never done nothing to them. And Joel says they hate themselves most of the time. They have to hate someone more than they hate ourselves, more than they hate themselves. That's us. And then Horace just becomes so angry. And Joel, being the older brother, he understands, but he says something that Renzi, like, hush, boy. Somebody might hear you. You don't hate them. You wouldn't blame, I wouldn't blame you if you did, but you ain't been taught to hate nobody. Renzi Hawkins is our mama. She don't allow that kind of talk. Best to say that you just don't understand them. And I'm like, listen, we all have that person, that Renzi that says, hey, we not going to do to us what they do. We're not going to do to them what they do to us.
Absolutely.
And you have to mind your words, because you just never know who's listening, and someone is always listening.
Right.
When you wrote that, how were you feeling at the time when that dialogue came about?
Oh, you broke up a little bit. So can you ask that again? Because I want to make sure I got an accurate read of the question. I
said, when you wrote that dialogue between the brothers, what was going through your head as a writer at that time when, putting that out on paper or on screen?
Ms. KeKe, I wish I could take credit for it. And I wish that I really did have a thought process. But as I told you before, this was more than me. So if you ask as regards to the nuances of what I was thinking as I wrote it, I literally have to defer that to whatever was being channeled through me. I don't necessarily take credit for the nuances in regards to the dialogue and stuff like that. It literally just came out. It just literally poured out. And so for me to say, I was thinking this, I was thinking that, as I said, I had to read the book myself again to really understand kind of what I had put out there. And so I guess that's the best way I can describe it. I will take credit for it.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing dialogue. And that it makes me appreciate you writing this book 10 times more, because you get lost in letting the story take you where it wanted to go. And I believe that when we allow the story to tell itself, it becomes, it's authentic, and it's just easy flowing, and it doesn't feel forced. And those make the beautiful stories. And the Synchronization of Life is a great story. when you wrote about Horace's first wife
Mhm.
and what happened to her,
Mhm.
is that real? Was that real?
Well, the whole story is real. I'm gonna let you side. The whole story is a real story.
I know, but is that factual? You don't want to tell me.
I want to leave something for the reader, and I will just simply say this. My grandfather had 3 wives. We didn't know about the first wife until my great grandmother had passed away. So we didn't even know that there was a first wife before that.
Oh, wow.
And so as I'm coming up, my great grandmother Maggie, which was his 3rd wife and is the only great grandmother that I knew within that family, I thought that everybody, we called her Maggie. Her name was Margaret. We called her Maggie. I thought everybody had a Maggie. I thought Maggie was like people who say they got a Nana. I thought everybody had a Maggie. So
Right.
I didn't understand that I had a step great grandmother. She was the only one I knew. But I would just say this: he had 3 wives. They had very unique stories, and they had very unique relationships with him, and each one of them, their story needs to be told.
Wow. Thank you. I mean, thank you for that, because that gives me some level of clarity when it comes to because like I said, Horace had some heartbreaking, like a lot, most of the people in the book had a lot of heartbreak, but his was so, because he was just, he was longing for something better, growing up the way that he grew up in, and where he comes from. I'm so happy that he had that older brother to say, you know what, I believe in you. I know that God has something greater for you. Come, let me take you out of this. And when they finally reunite, and how they embrace each other, I cried on that part because it made my brother lives in California, so it made me miss my brother a lot.
Yeah.
But when it comes to expression of emotions and love, when it comes to Black men, can you talk about that a little bit? Like, why do you believe that is necessary within the family structure to show affection and love to each other as a man, and not feel like it's looked upon as being weak?
I'll just put it this way. I'm going to say it this exact way that I want to say it, and I hope this resonates. We have for so long as African-American males felt like being kind, being loving, showing emotion is somehow a weakness. For me, in my construct, my spirituality, my belief, I was raised as a Christian. I was raised as AME Zion. So I have a belief in God. I have a belief in Christ. Christ was kind. Christ was loving. Christ showed all types of emotion, good and bad. Christ was definitely not weak. And so when I go back and I truly think this construct, we have somehow made ourselves believe that human interaction that I think we all need to have is somehow that is not a part of who we need to be. And I'll readily admit, I still struggle with some of my emotional detachment that I may have. I remember my dad died in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't cry for 3 years. And that's my father.
Mm-hmm.
That's the man that raised me. I didn't cry at his funeral.
Wow.
I didn't cry at the interment. I didn't cry until 3 years later. I'm at his grave site and I have my son and daughter in tow, holding their hands,
Mm-hmm.
and I just break down. And my wife is there, and my kids are there.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally the only time I ever cried about my father. He's been dead 17 years. And my detachment is enough that I don't want to have that happen again. So I've avoided going to his burial site.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the dynamic. I will say this, it's something that I think I work on daily.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopeful. My son just had his first child a month ago, and I'm watching him as he's interacting with his daughter. And so I'm all about each one teach one. So I'm hoping that he takes the positive things, the attributes about me and my loving relationship with him, and he translates that, and it's even better with my granddaughter than I was with him. So
Absolutely.
I just think it's just a generational thing that we're going to have to continue to emphasize, and we lead by example. And
right.
So it's why I can, kids that I was involved with through my son as they have grown up, it's why if they come to the house now, it's why I can hug them.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell them, man, it's good to see you.
Right.
And that is a genuine feeling, and they in turn can give it back to me. And there's no pretense with that. That's a genuineness. And I just think that we have to lead by example. We have to show young men over and over again that it's okay.
Yep. And in order to do that, we have to have self-compassion, because if we don't have compassion of self, we will not be able to give it to anybody else.
Exactly.
And stop being afraid of what other people will say. If you feel like hugging your brother or your sister or kissing your dad or your mom, do that. Do it because that's what you feel in that moment, not because it looks right or feels, it sounds right. Do it because there's something that you really want to do. Exactly. That way, people who are watching, and someone is always watching, will see the genuineness. They can actually feel it. Because I'm going back to when it's a part in the book, and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to give anything away. It's a part in the book where Horace, he sees his family, and it says they all gave him this look. It was a look of their strength, their courage, and their resolve. That right there was so powerful to me, to know that, okay, we're family. I haven't seen these people, I haven't spoken to these people, but when I see them, they see me, because I'm looking at them, but I'm seeing myself in them. They're giving me strength because of their strength,
Guess what that is? That was known in my family dynamic as the Hawkins look. That's the Hawkins look.
Hawkins look.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm blended with so many lines, but that Hawkins look, I still got it.
Wow. Yeah. That is amazing. And when Horace returns to Mississippi, the fact that him and his dad was able to smoke that pipe, I was so giddy. Like, I smiled doing that part, because he was like, that is not my son. Yes, it is, Dad. That's him. And so when he got that revelation, and said, you know what, that is my boy. And then Horace said, I got you something. He was like, you got me something. So I love the fact that although their bond wasn't the most, strong in, strength, that they got that moment. They was able to have that moment. And I think that, little moments with the people that we love, we shouldn't draw those out. we should have those as many times as we possibly can, because tomorrow is not promised. We're here today, gone today. We just never know when our time is going to come to an end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So was that a real moment?
As far as Horace returning to Mississippi and seeing his father?
Okay. I'm so glad. I'm so glad, because I believe that Horace needed that. He needed that. Although he was in a great place in his life, I think he still needs it, because every boy needs their dad. I mean, every child, period. But to know how he left and he hadn't been back, and then he saw him when they saw him, and it was, a bad situation when they saw each other, so they didn't really get a chance to get into anything. And for him going back and them having that moment, I'm so glad that it happened like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think the amazing thing when I'm looking at that and I'm structuring it and I'm thinking about the dynamics of it, those two people are direct lines to me.
Right.
So Horace is my great grandfather and Levi is my great great grandfather. And without either one of them, I wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't be here. Well, you reading this book, you come from a long line of amazing people.
Well, thank you. I think, and I didn't always understand that. I understand it now, though. Yeah.
So, before we get off, what would you tell listeners when it comes to the family structure right now that they can possibly do to change the narrative within their family, to make sure that the next generation is aware of all of the greatness that the past generation has carried?
I think that the key for all of us, and we understand the dynamic of family, individual families, but I think we're going to have to begin to have that sense of community that we always had. We're going to have to start taking ownership of those families and those young people that have not had the same type of interaction in a family dynamic that maybe we were fortunate enough to have. And so I think about, people will ask, well, what do we do about violence that we're perpetrating on each other? We have to take ownership, and we have to take ownership of young people. And we have to have that level of commitment that we would have with our own children. That's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do. And I understand when people say, something, I can't do it.
Right.
But I think until we do that, until we start filling these gaps, and until we start having this sense of community, I think we're going to continue to be lost and not be able to understand and share our stories at a high level. We are such a powerful people. And as I said, I'm so proud of my heritage and the dynamics of all those people who came from West Africa, not by choice, but they were brought here, and their level of survival and the fact that they even got to a point where I exist. So I've always had that level of pride.
Right.
What I do now try to have, I don't think that I can say it's pride yet, but I have a level of acceptance in regards to the other parts of me. So it's when we do these DNA tests and we see this percent whatever and this percent whatever. So I've always known the construct of being African and my folks being from Africa. I'm now trying to embrace, maybe is the word, when I see, I don't know, 10% British, that kind of thing.
Right.
So to say I'm proud, no, I can't say that, but at least I'm trying to be more accepting of understanding the dynamics. And I just think that's a good place to be.
Yes.
Because that's truly who you are. And that's, I just love to like pull back the layers and just understand, those people and, just what drove them to do the things that they did. You have so many relationships that were non-consensual.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen and John Thomas's was consensual,
Mm-hmm.
So I've always wondered how many stories are out there like that.
Right.
We always assumed that we were the product of non-consensual things, but I wonder how many stories are out there like that.
Until I read your book, I never thought about that as a concept at all. You could have never made me think that. Everything was, no, they took my great-grandmother.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that, young people will say, let it marinate. So I just wanted to marinate. I wanted to marinate. I wanted to like, I never thought about that.
I did not.
Yeah.
I did not. This book is something special. I'll say it again, and I'll say it to all of the listeners who are listening to Kicking It with KeKe. Make sure that you guys go and purchase this book. Let everybody know how they can get a copy, please.
It's available on Amazon. It's also available at an independent website that is run by me, which is Sync of Life, SYNCOVLIFE.com. Sync of Life.
Syncoflife.com. You got that, guys? And I'll put it in the description once I upload everything. And I want to read this powerful statement, and it may be a spoiler to a particular point, but it gave me goosebumps. It says, the sandy earth of the Alabama countryside compressed under the wagon's wheels. The tracks that were left by the wagon were all that were left to show that a man named John Thomas LaRoche had existed on this earth. As Blank McKenzie looked at the tracks, he realized that he was also representative. Yes, I get tongue-tied on different words. Representative of John Thomas's existence. He and his brother Bill were tracks that were left, and John Thomas LaRoche had been the wagon. In turn, the children of the McKenzie siblings and future generations to come would be tracks left in the soil from the wagon that had been John Thomas's life. That right there was so powerful. He compared those. John Thomas was the wagon, and he and his siblings were the tracks. How in the world did you come up with that? That is awesome writing, to say the least. Like, oh my God.
No, I can't take it. It's a spiritual thing. It was a spiritual connection. And Ms. KeKe, I just continue to say this. I'm privileged to have been the vessel in which this comes out, for it to be channeled through me. But I literally give all the credit to the higher power. I give all the credit to the ancestors before me. And we talked a little bit about my great grandmother Bessie. And I wonder, I sit back and I wonder, like, how did that get to me? How does it channel through me? Who's responsible for that? Who's using me in that manner? Could be Bessie. Could be somebody else. But I am convinced that it was I can take about that much credit for some of the stuff, but I do feel like it was a divine spiritual construct that got me to write this book.
Well, I thank God for it. And I thank God for using you to put these words onto paper to create this book. You guys, this is the book. Again, it's called The Synchronization of Life by Dr. Robert Copeland.
Thank you.
Y'all make
Thank
sure
you so much.
that y'all go and get it. And Dr. Copeland, can you tell before we end, can you tell everyone how they can connect with you? Like, I don't know if you have social media or anything like that.
Yeah.
How can we connect with you?
Facebook have the Synchronization of Life, as it is in the title of the book. That's my Facebook page for the book. Also can be reached at syncoflife.com, and also can be reached via Instagram, and it's also at Sync of Life.
All right. With that being said, any closing remarks that you would like to leave with the listeners today?
Just very simply, let's explore who we are. Let's pull back the layers. Let's own and learn from that, and let's move forward in a positive light. And if we do that, I think we can be committed to trying to make this world a better place. And I think that's where all of our headspace should be.
Well, I thank you very much for kicking it with KeKe today.
Thank you.
It has been a great experience. I wish you continued success. And we're gonna get the copies of this book out there, because this is a story that is phenomenal. It is relevant, and I think that it will open up dialogue and so much for families to understand where they came from, embrace that, and tell the next generation about it to carry on the family legacy. So thank you guys for listening. Again, Dr. Copeland, thank you for kicking it with me today. Y'all have a great day. And until next time, make sure that you embrace who you are by embracing where you came from.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.